Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast. We got best bets here on a Wednesday slate with 12 games to choose from. Tons of games here on the slate for us. We've got best bets in this one and also for play props up in the other video. So make sure to subscribe to that page and continue to follow along with us all season. And head to thelines.com and use everything we have up on the site right now as we gear up for more March Madness and these NBA playoffs as they kick off here in a few weeks. But Nate, let's go ahead and jump right into your first best bet of the night.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Pacers here, -2.5 now. It was -3 a minute ago at Chicago. Really just feeling like the Pacers are a great team again now that Halliburton is fully back. I mean, his last four on this road trip, 137 offensive rating, 20 and 10, 50% from deep. And he's the rare guy who, like Alex Caruso, can't really get physical with or wrangle up because he is happy to, kind of slither around and play make. And in his last two against Chicago with Caruso playing, even higher offensive rating because he has 17 assists per game, and the shooting splits have not been as good as they've been lately, but still good enough, 43-37%. I mean, the Pacers have some really impressive road wins lately at Dallas, Orlando, OKC, the Warriors, and then the Clippers, who are struggling, but and they almost beat the Lakers in that insane shootout game. Other than that, their defense has actually been much better. As we talk about all the time, the new look Pacers post All-Star break with Siakam, they're actually like a middling defense, and they're actually like top 10 in a few categories here on the road where they've brought it. They're 6-1 against the spread now. Their last 7 roadies, plus 12 net, and 5th in opponent 3-point percentage, assists per game. Number 1 in terms of limiting points off turnovers, which is somewhere Chicago has kind of thrived in their last 6. They are vulnerable. I mean, particularly giving up free throws and giving up offensive rebounds. But I don't think Chicago is really that dangerous in terms of Vooch pummeling you on the glass. They don't play a power forward again. So I just don't think that that's an issue they're going to have here. The last meeting, I mean, obviously Chicago is a big time mid-range team. So that it's not as much about the 3-point shooting. And the last time they met, DeRozan went off in the mid-range, 46 points on 15 for 24, carried them to a win. That's replicable, sure, but I think they'll do a little bit of a better job on him. I think the Bulls are just exhausted from their schedule stretch. There we go. At home in March, they're only 1-6 against the spread, 2-5 straight up. And Pacers proved that they can capitalize on the fact that the Bulls are forcing more 3-point attempts than anybody else, and hoping that you don't beat them from beyond there. But the time before that, when they played at Chicago, Pacers won 120-104. They had a 36-point edge in terms of threes, hit 12 more threes than the Bulls, had 30 assists on 43 field goals. And that's where they're cooking right now, right? 32 assists, 10 turnovers in this hot stretch on the road, shooting 44% from deep. So, I mean, we know the Pacers are going to score. It's just a question of is their defense going to be decent enough to slow down Chicago? And I think so. I don't think Chicago has the firepower to keep pace with the Pacers now that Halliburton's fully back.
Totally. Yeah, I think Halliburton's fully back is the key to all of this. And I was definitely going to take this game as well. So I fully support that, as a bet of -2.5 was a good number last night as well when I took it. So I'm totally on board with all of this. I don't have much respect for Chicago down the stretch. No offense to anybody on their team. They're playing a lot of dudes that would be marginal rotation players on a bunch of other rosters, and even in the Eastern Conference. So I fully support the Halliburton-led Pacers being back on offense and coming back a little bit better on defense. And I mean, I was thinking about it yesterday. I was like, why did they sign Bruce Brown to trade him? Did all this? And it was like, well, honestly, I think they found some redundancies. It kind of sucked that Benny Matz got hurt for the season, because I think he was a big reason that they felt okay getting rid of Buddy Hield and Brucey B with his ability to play. So that was a little bit of a hurt them a little bit, but not enough that I wouldn't take them in this one. They have been a deep roster all season. There's some guys buried on their bench that would be getting minutes on certain other places. So they are definitely better on defense with Neesmith in there more often, and Nembhard as well. Both two really good, solid defenders that have really picked it up for them. And I expect Halliburton to have a really big game. So I'll talk about that a bit more later. But let me move on to a game that's going to be slightly less fun, in my opinion, because I don't think it's going to be beautiful basketball. That's the Clippers at the 76ers. And it's going to be hard to find a beautiful game of basketball with the 76ers involved in it right now. So I would never dream of taking an over with them in the game. They've gone over basically like once in their last roughly 9 games. So in that time frame for this Clips team, we're talking about basically, I mean, if Toronto wasn't a team, they might be the worst offense. They're seventh worst in the last 5 games, and basically around that for the last 10 to 15 as well. Their D rating, pretty good though, but up to 10th over the last 5 games, and really hanging strong over the last 10 as well, as they like really slow things down, playing at the 8th slowest pace, and really making like trying to keep these games close by just playing sort of not sloppy, but let's call it slobber knocker basketball a little bit more, even though they don't have the interior presence. They've been a really good defense against jump shooting teams, which is really crucial against this Clippers team that has not been attacking the basket pretty much for the season. We might see that go up a little bit with Russ Westbrook in here now, but he's still only probably on somewhat of a minutes limit, capped at the most at 25. He played 22 in his first game back last game for them, but he is the only dude that really speeds things up for them, especially with James Harden getting back into like sort of full form in terms of the amount of minutes that he's getting. He slows things down a ton with his individual pace and the way that he plays in the half court. No, it also means no Bones Highland when James Harden's on the floor, and Bones is the dude who really speeds them up as much as anybody, including Russ, but he's doing that on the second unit. So the pace for the Clippers, also bottom 5 last 5 games. Neither team is good at rebounding, by the way. The Clips are really relying on Zubac to be their key rebounder at this point. And once again, that'll get a little bit better with Russ Westbrook, who at one point was the center for the Houston Rockets. So he's a very good rebounder at quote unquote point guard, right? But they're still struggling a ton there. So I don't see like the offensive glass getting attacked too much. While both teams are allowing the other team to get a pretty good effective field goal percentage, they're not giving up as much from 3. The Sixers have been a really good 3-point defense. And for both teams, it's like, are you a good jump shooting defense? Because if you are, you probably can handle hanging with these teams, right? For the Clippers, they have the 6th highest frequency shooting from the mid range and 5th highest shooting from above the break. That's a lot of James Harden, as we know, and some Paul George mixed in there. And the Sixers, 6th best opponent 3-pointers made, giving up the 6th fewest, I should say, and the 8th best mid range defensive field goal percentage. So they are limiting things. This team will turn you over, by the way. If the Clippers aren't scared, I would definitely not take the Clippers to cover as road dogs, even with the sort of revenge factor after they lost in bad fashion to this Sixers team at home just a few weeks ago. I still don't really care. Like, since when have they had the sort of spunk to be like, hey, we're going to make sure we come back and win this one? Maybe you like James Harden to be that dude for them who's like revenge factor with the Sixers and all that, but like this is a bad matchup for him. Like, if you're just a jump shooter who really can't get by people and all the way to the rim, then you're not going to have that much success against this Philly defense. And so the under 217.5 actually felt safer to me than taking the Sixers, who cannot score to save their lives. So I wouldn't really feel comfortable for them to backing them to cover 5.5 points.
Yeah, I mean, they can't score, but the Clippers can't stop anybody. Like, are you not concerned about the Sixers getting 121, being one of the worst offenses in the league, and going there and getting 18 threes and 32 assists? Not.
No.
I mean, for me, I like your other under a lot more, which you get into with Toronto being involved. I think Philly is capable of turning it around here. The fact that Kelly Oubre might not play for a second straight game is hopeful, though, because like their offense is definitely going to be worse without him. But I mean, you mentioned if you have to be able to get by people, so that's why I like Norman Powell prop here, which I'll get to in player props. But I don't know, it's a tough one to call for me. Yeah, I started by going Sixers +6, which is getting a little steam now, is getting closer to +5. But I just don't know how to read like the mental makeup of this Clippers team right now and like where they're gonna care. Like, yeah, it's really a weird mindset. But let's take the Houston Rockets +7 at OKC. I mean, it's the hottest team in the league right now against a team that's on a back-to-back. And even though OKC is the best team in the league on back-to-backs, or has been over the course of an entire season, they're actually 3-3 in their last 6 back-to-backs here. And they basically lost anytime they've played like a playoff team, the Lakers, Wolves, and Clippers have all gotten them, and they had a 128 defensive rating in those losses. I think at first glance, the over looks kind of appealing in this one as well, because OKC has had some crazy totals in that, and because we know how the Rockets have changed the way they play without Şengün. There's a lot more pace and space, a lot, and it's going much faster. And so I don't, I'm not as concerned that they lost back-to-back games against OKC and did not cover in late February with Şengün. I am encouraged by the fact that Jabari Smith had big lines in those games, and now he'll be at the 5, matching up against Chet. I mean, since those losses, they're 5-0 against the spread as underdogs. I mean, they're like 11-1 against the spread overall. They've had a rest advantage in a lot of those games in March. In fact, they've won 11 straight games when they've had a rest advantage, and that's what they have here. Also, I mean, SGA, of course, killed them in those 2 matchups, 33 points per game in his last 3, and he's still slumping. Like, I mean, they managed to get that win over the Pels, but it was not because SGA was like completely on fire. He's still averaging 24 with a 115 rating. No longer an MVP candidate, probably, which is sad to say. But I mean, with an 8-game sample, like I don't necessarily say like, oh well, next game back he's gonna bounce back, and I think they're much better positioned to guard him now without Şengün out there, right? I mean, you get Amen Thompson floating around as a false 5, as they say, or just like as another athletic pest to deal with him. Also, Fred VanVleet and Jalen were ice cold in those first 2 meetings, and now Jalen Green is one of the hottest offensive players in the league. He's going to be out with something to prove here against OKC. Also, Houston, one of the best rebounding teams in the league during this stretch, and OKC, that is where they're most vulnerable. And the one thing, like if this was at home, it would be bigger units bet for sure for the Rockets, even if the spread was smaller. They are, starting to figure some stuff out on the road, at least during this stretch, plus 10 net. 3 easy wins in there, but also wins at Phoenix and at Sacramento, which, while they lost Şengün. So I'm willing to ride with the Rockets until proven otherwise, like even against a really good team like OKC.
That's fair. The Rockets are my sort of adopted team for this season. Absolutely. Have absolutely loved the way that they've sort of just changed who they are. I'm not ready to say by any means that they're better without Şengün. Maybe they're able to learn something here from it. But the thing that scares me is OKC, crushing teams on no rest, playing at home, having something to prove themselves, as they have still a really solid shot at the 1 seed in the West. So that's the only part that scares me about it, is like, I need to see the Rockets play somebody good. I still have not seen that in this 7-game span. Like I might be tarnishing this
started it by
this Bulls team a little bit more than most.
Phoenix not good?
Even the Cavs, who were playing without everybody once again in their game over this stretch of like 8-0 or whatever. There's just a lot of Wizards and Blazers and Bears. Oh my, that this team is crushing for the Rockets. So it's not quite a team I trust just yet. And like with the way that the Dubs won last night, like. It just kind of feels like this is the moment in time. We talked about it yesterday. It was like we might have missed the boat on taking a future for the Rockets, because even at like plus 400 for them to make the play-in right now or whatever it is, like a ridiculously good, juicy number for a team that's only back 1 game of the 10 seed. It still is like a little bit scary to me with the way that I could see them just faltering a bit against the good teams that they have left after this stretch of teams against absolute dog poo. So that's the only thing that scares me about this one. But look, this is my second favorite team in the league after my favorite team, which is the Knicks. And I'm gonna talk about them real quick and their game against Toronto. And Toronto, 30th in offensive rating. It's gonna be tough for this team to score. They've been a little bit better on defense, and I do think there's still something to the idea that they score 10 more points per game on the road than when they're at home over the course of the last couple of weeks, since they just changed their team into the current iteration of the Raptors, which is to say backups, I guess, at this point, right? Because the 6 best players are not in for them anymore. That has meant that Kelly Olynyk is the starting center. That's not great when you're trying to shut down the Knicks. They are going to be attacking the rim, but they also have been a jump shooting team, and we've seen them when they actually get hot and get above 100 points, for instance, or 105 points for this Knicks team. They're relying on a ton of 3-point shooting. And that's the only thing that the Toronto Raptors can do kind of well on defense, is limit jump shooting to the other team. They are 17th in defensive rating over their last 5 games, and they've been playing a very bad schedule as well, basically like the 10th easiest strength of schedule over the course of those last 5. But the defensive turnover percentage for them is pretty high. They're could turn this Knicks team over, who actually have the 10th highest turnover percentage on the season. Not the 10th highest amount of turnovers, because they play so slowly that the rate of turnovers is more important here than the actual number of turnovers. But they're also number one in the last 5 in terms of defending above the break shots, above the break threes, even a step inside from the mid-range. They've been very good as well. And the Knicks are relying a ton on mid-range, mostly on threes as per usual, especially over their last 10 games. They have the 10th highest three-point frequency in terms of the amount of shots that they're taking from 3 each possession that they have. And if you can stop that decently well, right, and you do defend jump shooters, then like you could keep this thing a little bit close. But I mean, the Raptors under like 98.5 is probably just as good of a bet, because the Knicks might get 110 points, and I would still feel good, really good about an under here at the 210.5 or so that we get it at now, 211.5. If you can still find some of those hanging around, as this did get bet down a little bit, but I'm like, when it comes to the Knicks malaise, I don't believe that occurs on defense. I think sometimes they get lackadaisical on offense, and if they're not hitting threes, then they're not scoring very many points at all. And I do think they'll be fine in this game. 13.5 is a bit rich for me, even at this point in the season, even after we saw them just take the Pistons to the woodshed recently. Tibbs is a psycho. So like, I would definitely never take Toronto, because this team's going to be up 30 and we're going to see Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson in the game playing 38 minutes. Someone needs to lock him up. Like there's no way we're going to make it into the playoffs anyway with all these dudes playing 40 minutes and blowout wins against bottom feeders. So hopefully that doesn't happen here, but it's a reason that I would never take an underdog even with a big spread against the Knicks right now.
Yeah, I mean, 7 straight unders for the Raptors. We thought it would be bad in terms of them tanking and deliberately to get that top 6 protected pick back in that range, and it has exceeded all expectations in terms of like, let's just literally not field a competitive lineup. I mean, this Jonte Porter stuff being in the news is kind of a bad look if they're going to continue to not score and not even be competitive. But I mean, you can't accuse them of not covering a 15-point spread on purpose. But you take the under, you're just banking on them literally just not fielding a competitive lineup against a team that, like you said, yeah, Tibbs doesn't let up on defense. They do not take their foot off your neck, even if you are playing G Leaguers. Like the Knicks would be happy to beat down the YMCA All-Stars down the street. If that's who's on their schedule, they will just go out there and grind you into dust.
And he'll grind our players into dust as well. You want to know how much the Raptors aren't trying? They have Emmanuel Quickley listed as out for conditioning reasons. I cannot think of 5 people in better condition than Emmanuel Quickley, who's running around at top speed for the whole game. So that's where the Raptors are at this season. But that is all the time we have for you in Best Bets. Also got to play a props video up as we do each and every weekday. So make sure to subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along. Until we see you next, happy betting.